Hello, everyone, and welcome to Callsign Charlie Models for day 4 of the Lukgraph 132nd Caproni Ca.3. And in day 3, what we got done was a lot of the photo etch turnbuckle anchor points and some other parts done. And today, what we're planning on doing is I got the rest of the anchor points done off camera. And now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to do some final cleanup and test fit of some of the parts. And then we're also going to wire the engines. After the engines are wired and everything is test fit, we can start putting primer down and getting paint on this. I'm not doing much assembly on this. We're going to get the wings all assembled, so that way if we need to do any putty work to those, we can get those done as well before we start paint. But really, that's the only assembly that's going to be going on before we do any paint. All the assembly is going to come afterwards. So I'm going to get the camera turned around so we can get to work on the bench. So I will see you in 1 second. Alright, so now it's time to start the pre-fitting, test fitting of the cockpit hub that's going to go into the onto the wings. Had a few more 3D print support blocks to cut off, or some supports that weren't all the way cleaned up, so took care of the cleanup on that. And now we're going to do a test fit on the wing. It's fitting alright fore and aft, but around that curve where at the wing root area just isn't fitting right. So I'm wondering what is pushing it off. So I'm cutting off some bits to see what's going on. Right here, using my God hand plastic nippers that cut like butter. Worth every cent, in my opinion. But so that wasn't it. So now we're trying another area, see if that's causing the issue. Sanding off some of the bottom supports right there, seeing if that's the issue, and just keep on going slowly but surely, going little by little and doing test fits every so often so I don't sand off too much. As you see, again, same issue as before. So what I am thinking is that the curvature for the wing root area is just a little bit off, and what I'll be doing is I'll be coming in with some putty later on after assembly or even paint and getting that touched up, and then we'll have to retouch up the paint once that is done. But that is a very small area, and I'll be using the perfect putty, plastic putty for this, which you apply it and then you wipe it off with a wet Q-tip. There's no sanding required or anything like that for it, so it's very nice for areas like this. Also, when I'm cutting with the cutters, I have my finger underneath of it, kind of supporting it to make sure that it doesn't snap when I'm cutting. I did have that issue with the Grumman duck. I did have the wall snap out on me when I was trying to cut some stuff, so definitely learned my lesson on that part, and making sure that it is supported and cutting very slowly and softly when I'm doing those cuts. I'm not rushing those cuts, even with the God hand cutters that are super smooth on their cut. This is the last test fit. It's fitting fore and aft on the bottom side with no issues. It's nice and flush on those, but when it comes to that curvature, just is not fitting upright. So don't know what the issue is. Now I'm moving on to the wing booms right here. They're a pretty good fit straight out of the box. Just a couple little uh, cleanup areas that I need to do. Like the front connection points were throwing it off a little bit for some reason, so I cut those off. And with a little bit of motivation, with giving the resin a little bit of motivation, it does fit. So just doing some final cleanup right here with some of the support areas that were cut off, getting those all cleaned up. So that way when we paint it, you won't have those extra little pokey bits sticking up from the paint. when the engine is in there, you're not really going to be able to see inside of there too much. I did do a test fit with the engine. It does cover up a lot of that stuff and that a lot of that area. We're doing the test fit on the other one, much of the same thing with the fit issues being the same on both of them. Just need to do a little bit of cleanup and we will be good to go on those. Final test fit, like I said, with a little bit of extra motivation, the parts do fit pretty nice. And it's not that much of a force to get them to fit. I don't know if there's some shrinkage in the resin between printing and shipping here, but they were only off by maybe a half a millimeter. So now, moving on to the wings, we're going to do a quick test to see how they're going to look, and then we're going to grab the brass rods that are included in the kit for support of this because the wings are very, very long and they are very heavy. The wings do measure in at 27 1/4 inches, so this is definitely not going to be a small build. So if you are in space constraints area, I would highly not recommend this kit because this is going to be a very large kit. They do have it in 1/48 scale, so that will be a better option if your space is very limited. Holding the wings together, just a little gap there. Again, with the perfect putty, shouldn't be an issue to get that fixed. And now we're coming in with the other side, same deal. So we'll get that glued together. There we go. There's the bottom wing glued together. Just a little bit of putty, and actually I'm going to come in with my UV resin to kind of fill that gap. It's a thicker agent, so it'll fill the gap a lot easier, and I can just wipe it off with a Q-tip before I cure it, like that. And then I'm going to come in with my flashlight and let it cure. We're still going to have a little bit of a gap there, but it filled the majority of the gap and also added some strength to that joint. Alright, now we're moving on to the upper wings. Same thing with the brass rods, get the 3 in the middle. I think if I was to do this again, I would start from the wingtips and work my way across. Because I do run into an issue where I have to, there's 2 rods per, so there's a total of 6 rods per wing in this kit. And they do go all the way across the wing. And I use some UV resin to help fill that gap area. Alright, now we're moving on to the wingtips. Now surprisingly, the wingtip fit area was absolutely gorgeous. Now I just have a little bit of the 3D print supports to clean up. Somehow I grabbed one of the vertical stabilizers out of the bin. But yeah, we're moving on to the wingtips, getting those all prepped and ready to go. Starting off with the top wingtips. As you can see here in a second, I gotta kind of fix the wings. All right, there we go. Getting the brass rods put in for the wingtips. Repeating for the other side. Had to hammer that one in a little bit, but we're going to get the wingtip slid in, and it is an absolutely perfect fit. I was surprised on how perfect this fit was. I'll get it glued in. Only one of the wingtips was giving me any issue on the fit, and you'll see that here in a little bit. Both of the bottom wing fits were good. And moving on to the upper wing right here. That one is good. Then this was the one that gave me the issue. It wasn't a huge issue, it just pushed itself back out after a little bit, and I had to take care of that. So, gonna get it kind of forced back in. If I would have had a third hand on this one, I would have used a UV glue, but I didn't. So now we're moving on to the ailerons, getting these cleaned up and attached. There was a lot of cleanup to get done on this. Had to thin the actual connection points to get them to fit in, and also there were 3D print supports inside of each of the gaps that the aileron slip into right there. So I had to be very careful in cleaning those out. Getting that in. And then also I attached this one, and realized I had it on upside down. I had the wrong one on, so I had to break it free and reattach and clean up and do all that with the super glue to get the correct side on. Here's where I realized I did it wrong. So now we're doing the cleanup on it again. Using my Tamiya file. Making sure I'm using the edge that isn't serrated, so I don't saw through and make additional gaps that don't need to be there. You might be saying, hey Andre, why aren't you just using the instructions to figure out which one goes where? It's because that is the one downside of this whole kit, is that the instructions on this absolutely suck. They are very vague on what goes where, and there are no part numbers or anything like that, so you just have to kind of wing it, no pun intended, to get things to fit, and you just keep on testing and seeing which one goes where. I said the kit is absolutely gorgeous. The 3D printing and the detail in it, in the entire kit, absolutely gorgeous. The fit, for the most part, from what I've dealt with, has been really, really good. Minus a couple little areas that are simple fixes once they're done. But the major downfall of this kit are the instructions. I know I've said this a million times. I sound like a broken record on it, but I just cannot say how bad the instructions are or how vague the instructions are. It's going to repeat this step 3 more times. Same issue with the upper wings as what we did the lower wings, but now that I know which ailerons go where, it does make it a little bit easier and not so time consuming when putting on these parts. Now we are moving on to the horizontal stabilizer and the elevator. Again, just very tiny 3D print supports that were in the little notches where the elevator fits into. So I had to get those all cleaned up and make sure that we had a good clean area for the elevator to slot into, which was a little bit of an issue. You'll see here in a little bit on how I had to kind of glue it in notch by notch to get it to work, but it does look like it's a very nice fit when it's all said and done. just tack it into place with some super glue. Just slowly start working my way down. Now it doesn't look slow on the video because I have it sped up 4 times fast, but so this whole video was 2.5 hours or 3 hours worth of work that I